Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are getting into week 19 of the RSC podcast, ThePreJump here. Joining me on the desk, as always, we've got Mr. Rob, and we've got the legend returning himself, Mr. Croc here, coming back in for round two. Fellas, how is your night going?
Well, it's about to get a lot better now that we're firing up the podcast tonight.
My night's all right. Had a great dinner. Now I'm excited to sit down with a couple of my buddies, talk about the league, the happenings, the streaks. It'll be exciting to see how the first week went down.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, we actually have solid content. We're not really just winging it anymore. We actually have opening week of RSC here. Monday and Wednesday have already rolled by. We've got some 8-0 teams. Not surprised. Once we get a little further into it, we'll kind of break those down. But, fellas, I don't even know where we're going with that, honestly. You know what?
It's just leave it like that, fellas, and then blink.
Fellas, let's just go ahead and shift into the breakdown here. You know what? I'll get us kicked off if you fellas don't mind. We've got in Premier in first place 8-0, the Viperfish. In second place, we've got the Hurricanes. They're 7-1. Crooked Capos tied with them there as well, sitting squarely in third. In fourth place, the Capybaras 5-3. And in fifth place, making their premier debut on any top 10 list, their first season ever, we've got the ThePreJump at 4-4.
What a name!
What a name! What a name! Rob, I really do like seeing a franchise getting its name out there so quickly, especially when it rebrands this well. So. It's just nice. It's nice to kind of see how things are squaring up there.
Yeah, we'll talk about them a little bit later, I'm sure. But even though they're on that top 5 list, they might not be that happy with that 5 spot.
Well, I mean, they are 4-4. It's not the greatest way to open up a season, and I'm kind of surprised that fifth place for Premier is 4-4. I kind of thought I might have seen another 5-3 there. Would have been a little bit nicer, but it is what it is.
Well, you absolutely would have if the ThePreJump didn't 0-4 this week on stream against those Viperfish, right? So that's something, again, that we can talk about in a little bit, dive deeper into. But they're seeing that happen, right? You 4-0, another Prem team that has started out 4-0ing, right? Like that's a very, very strong start to your season. And it's not often you see teams go 8-0, let alone 7-1 in Premier. So having those top 3 teams, having those 3 records, you might just be looking at those 3 for the title. Early prediction, No recency bias at all.
I mean, the ThePreJump are not a pushover team when you look at their roster with Ante, P-Man, and Boog McCrug. So you definitely are pretty happy if you're the Viperfish coming out and 4-0ing them, especially in front of the RSC crowd opening week. If that's not going to generate some momentum for your team, then, the mental's chalked, and yeah, you might be 8-0 and get it out of there anyways. But no, they've got to have a bunch of momentum going in now to week 2. They're probably going to have eyes on them for the entire rest of the season after this opening start. And I bet you've got a lot of teams already reaching out to get some scrims in with them.
I bet they're definitely going to be the team that I remember from this week, right? That's going to be the team that when I think of how the early season went and how this season started, I'm going to remember that they had that 4-0 early. So they kind of have they have a target on their back now, right? Like no one else is 8-0. They did it on stream, so it'll be really interesting to see how it goes.
Don't break that down too much. We got to cover that in the second segment, man. That's the whole second segment is the stream games. Well, you know what, Rob? Let's go on and get into Master here. Let me get that pulled up on screen for you here. Get rid of the Prem. Let's pull up Master. There we go.
Alrighty. So moving into Master, tied for first, you have the Recluses and the Eggplants at 6-2, and then you have a 3-way tie right behind it with the Stagnant Stales, Heinous Henchmen, and the Care Bears all at 5-3. I think the first thing that jumps out to you is that it's that close, right? For the top team in the league to be 6-2, and for there to only be 2 of them, this is going to be an incredibly close tier. And I gotta shout out my boys on the eggplants. Tied for first overall in preseason. I'm excited to see what the boys can do this season.
I know it's really early in the season. I'm really glad to see the Heinous Henchmen bounce back. They really struggled last season in Master. This season, thankfully, they're starting off strong. I know it's only 5-3, but staying above 500 is always a win in my book. Croc, though, your team sitting squarely on top of the leaderboard. You got to be pretty proud of those Master boys.
I'm definitely pretty happy about it, but I'm not getting comfortable. I had a pretty similar start to my Master team last season, and they just fell apart. The team fell into shambles. So I'm not getting comfortable. It doesn't sound like the team's getting comfortable either. Blocky is a returning player from last season's Master team, and so he kind of saw it all happen firsthand. He's not ready to just let it sit and stagnate. I'm pretty sure they're going to be a contender for the championship this season, though, as long as they keep playing together and keep getting better together. I just want to take a second to shout out a dead moose on the stagnant stales.
Yeah.
This is someone who barely got pushed up to Master from Elite and is now topping the RPV charts and the SBV charts, and I think maybe top 3 for IDR. I think he's got 2 or 3 people above him. But that is crazy coming in as a tier minimum Master player and just pretty much saying, "Hey, you know what, guys? I'm here to stay and I'm here to play." Just crushing everybody else in the tier this week.
Yeah, everyone else in the top 10 in SBV and Master is, I believe, a first-round pick. So for Moose to just come out and absolutely go nuts is, first, it's awesome to see, and second, they might be a contender team. Remember, they have 3 tiermans, almost 4 tiermans on their team. So if they can pick up someone, and if they're already 5-3 starting out like this with 4 tierman players, if someone who's a little bit higher cost who can maybe push him over, take him to the next level becomes available, that's a terrifying team. So definitely also a team to keep an eye on as things move forward.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up, Rob, because I was going to say they have 2 players that are tier men. One person's 5 above, one person's 20 above. They're about 100 points cheaper than the next team. I don't think anybody on this list is even remotely close in cost. So you're right. If they can be a contender with effectively the bare minimum cost, it's going to throw a complete wrench into anybody's team building schemes.
Yeah, I feel like most GMs probably understand at this point though that you can build a championship team with 50 to 70 MMR left on the table pretty consistently. At the end of the day, you could get 3 of the best individual players in a tier and have them be your starters, but if they don't play together well on the field, they're just not even worth their cost. They're maybe giving you half their actual value. You put 3 ball chasers on the field and you never have anyone deep back as third man, you're not winning games. But then you put together a team that's got some chemistry, they play together and rotate together, they can not have necessarily the individual rating that the numbers formula gives them, but still crush some teams.
And I think the Stagnant Snails are the perfect team to bring that up for, right? Because you have that entire Azathoth lineup from 2 seasons ago, with Chips and Skullsy as well. So if anyone's can prove that you can compete with that much cap space, it's going to be them. They have better chem probably than any other team in RSC right now. And I bet they've played longer as a unit than anyone else. So I'm excited to see what they can do. And if they just stick with that lineup moving forward, I wouldn't be too surprised, and I couldn't blame them if they just stick with that.
Well, they're all. How many seasons have they played together? 2.
They were
3.
all starting lineup, I believe, 2 seasons ago, and then 2 of them were on the same team last season, with just Chips moving up to Master. So they've all been playing, but they've been playing with each other since then very frequently. So call it 8 months of just gaming a ton with each other. So they even play other games together. So they have a lot of that on and off field chem.
Yep. I would definitely not be surprised then to see them stick out with their current roster, even if they get to where maybe the championship's there, but they feel like maybe they aren't quite ready to
Mhm.
take the trophy itself. I still don't know if I'd see them making a move if they've got
Yeah.
that much kind of chemistry together.
Super
As long as
valuable
there's a
experience
chance.
too,
Yeah.
To keep
even if they
things
don't
moving
win.
along, though, fellas, we are already 15 minutes into the podcast. We need to start talking about Elite Croc. What you got for
Yeah.
us there?
I mean, with Elite, you got Azathoth coming in and topping the charts at 8-0 again. Just a dynasty in Elite at this
I
point.
guess so, man.
And then, yeah, that I know Rob is probably really happy about that one.
Whatever, man.
And then we got another 8-0 team, a double 8-0 team in Elite with Fire tying Azathoth right now. And interestingly enough, both on opposite sides of the conference spectrum. So it'd be interesting to see if those are going to continue to be the top two teams moving forward. Number 3 and 4, not far behind though, each at 7-1. You got the Teddy Bears from the Bear Den and Surus from the Herd. And tied at 5th, you have 4 teams that are 6-2. Pixel Picassos making the cut for the graphic, but you've also got Chef's Kiss, Sauntering Slugs, and the Ghastly Goombas all tied for that number 5 spot.
Yeah, I think the first thing that you got to talk about has to be Azathoth, right? That's the team that just had Chip Scolzi and Moose the last few seasons. They're the back-to-back elite champions. I believe the only returning starter is maybe the only returning player, I believe, is I'm Old Greg. And he is currently leading the entire tier in RPV with an 88. And his teammate DJ, who was on the opposite team in the finals last season, is right there behind him, also top 10 in RPV and Elite with an 83. So that's going to be a deadly duo at the top. I also got to say that there are some crazy duos here in Elite at the top. On the Teddy Bears, you have Scrooms and Forza. That's going to be crazy, right? Like, I don't even know how Forza's still in the tier. He's buddies with Scrooms. Scrooms is also a monster. You have Surus, who has Naro and Justice, and another guy who's apparently putting up crazy numbers. They're 7-1, and obviously Azathoth, you can't overlook 2 players who were in the finals against each other last season, right? With DJ and Greg.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be a very top-heavy tier this season.
Yeah, I personally numbers reported both Greg and Forza, and I was pretty confident that they were going to get moved up.
Yeah, I also reported Forza.
Look,
I
man,
mean, hey,
I'm glad to see. Well. I'm glad to see a split here. Like Master, we showed a lot of parity where a lot of the teams are very close. It's nice to see teams this early setting up themselves for a solid playoff run. You know, taking the tier by the reins and just setting themselves apart from the rest of the tier. It's crazy that when you look at this, Azathoth and Surus are both coming from Lunar Ember. That is going to be a absolute struggle for the Demons and Santa Muerte, who are both stuck in that tier with them. I mean, it's going to be rough.
They're pretty good too, though. Even like Lunar Ember, they're 4-4 and 3-5. So it's not even like they're just some 0-8 teams in there. Like those are some borderline. If you can finish around 500, you're close to a playoff team. So those are some good rosters there with them. So maybe, yeah, that's a crazy division. It seems like.
Yeah, especially with the Demons. Just because I was an AGM over at Monster Mash for a little while, so I know some of the guys that are on that team. Wicked, Kamul, Frosty Brew, and Tai Tai. I don't even know if they have a set 3 yet. I'm pretty sure. Let's see if looks like Tai Tai is the kind of rotating 4th player right now. But those are all really solid players, really smart players. So I don't think that they're gonna have too many issues fighting for a spot in that division. But it could be tough whenever they're going head to head against their division rivals when those games come up.
Well, and that's when we're talking about that as well. Like, Fire with Specky, what I'm seeing here for at least their division competition, they're going to probably have one of the easier paths. They're playing 2 teams that are 2-6. A team that's 5-3 is their next best competition. Yeah, I'm not Croc. I mean, that's got to be at least good for the mental. You know, you're 8-0 and you look at your inter-division games and you're going, I might be able to farm some here.
Yeah, you never really want to do that too early, at least not this early, because you still have to remember that every team's only played 2 games. You could have played a team that is going to end up not being super great this season. Maybe you played one of the weaker teams, and that's why you were able to get a 4-0. Or maybe you played one of the stronger teams, and that's why you got 3-1, or you got 4-0 yourself, and you're on the wrong end of it. It's really hard to tell until you get a little bit more data coming in. But you can use it for early predictions if you pay attention to who's on the roster and kind of do some scrims, some off night scrims. So it can be helpful, but uh, it's not 100% reliable this early in the season.
I would also like to very quickly, as the chat's bringing up, my homie Fluffy is on the 5th ranked team, Pixel Picasso's, and I think that if he starts playing like if he starts not playing like he does in the twos league, he's completely throwing in the twos league. We have the number 1 pick in elite, and he is just. But in threes, I think he has a chance to be really, really good this season. I think that he's a vet promo. He was the MVP in his conference and then the champion in vet. Didn't drop too crazy of stats, but I think it's because it was a really, really balanced team. Had a lot of talent around him. I think what you're going to see is a more confident Fluffy this season. That's kind of, even though he is promoted to another tier, right? I think you're going to see him kind of take over in a way that'll be really, really interesting to watch to see how far that Pixel Picasso's team can go. Because if Fluffy can, and I think he can, play like the best player in a tier on any given day, that's going to be another contender. Even though they're not one of those 7-1 or 8-0 teams, I think that they're going to be really dangerous.
Fair enough. All right, fellas. Well, I think it's a good time. Let's go ahead. We'll get the elite off the board here. Let's get good old vet here. If it wants to actually work right, let's see here. Go away, elite. Come on, vet.
Sounds like user error to me.
Look, man, I'm not the greatest producer. Let's.
There we go.
Talking about vet, let's talk about the herd. Guanacos 7-1. Sea Devils right there. Same with Gouda Gangsters. A 3-way tie for 7-1 on vet out of opening week. There's a 3-way tie for 4th place with Gorillas, Blues, and Need for Speed. All 6-2. And I mean, fellas, that is a lot at the top. We are talking some clearly in the lead teams here.
Immediately, I look at the top, right? Those 7-1 teams. You have one team that's from an entirely new franchise, and you have another team that finished as the number 2 overall seed last season. So you have some interesting stuff at the top. You have those new guys versus some established players, and I haven't been paying attention to vet yet, but I'm going to go look at who's on those teams right now.
Well, I think one thing you gotta look at too is just the rest of the standings for this tier. Everyone, they're a 7-way tie for 12th place at 4-4 with that 500 win percentage. One game night separates roughly 17th place, 16th place in the tier from first place. Right now, this is a tier that's waiting to be shooken up. I don't know who everybody played either. I know the Gouda Gangsters swept and then got a 3-1. They swept the Mosaic Maestros, which is a new franchise.
Irish, no.
And then they had... Where's their other game? Singularity. They 3-1 Singularity. So I'm not familiar with who's on either of those two teams. But that's a really good start, and I believe Tux is still playing for that team, right? Is he still in the veteran tier?
To my knowledge, yeah.
Yeah, so he's been there for a while, and he's probably had a couple of these guys for a while. This is probably no accident coming from them. This is most likely a well-established team, and he knows what he's doing with the tier and with the players on the field. I wouldn't be surprised to see him hanging out at the top of the standings for the rest of the season.
Absolutely. It seems like they're led by Yeaton Skeet with a 67 RPV.
The Merc Monster.
What a great name.
Yes, sir.
Gosh.
Rob.
Also, shout out my homie Doug. He's played one game and has 127 RPV. So clearly MVP leader right now. No, jokes aside, that Guanaco's team, Derp seems to be putting up some crazy numbers. He is currently dropping that 94 RPV and leading the way in goals by 3 on anyone else. He has 16 goals through 8 games, so averaging two entire goals per game will probably get you a pretty good start to the season. I'm interested to see how that pace holds up, right? Because those are the outlier numbers. Maybe they did play just kind of some lower end defensive teams and kind of farmed a few extra goals. Or Derp is going to be someone, what a funny name, is going to be someone that we have to keep our eye on in this MVP conversation. Like 2 goals per game for an entire season is that's championship numbers, you know?
Right. And not to mention, on those 16 goals, 41% shooting percentage.
Yeah.
Which is nuts for 39 shots this early in the season.
Yeah.
And he's only put up 11 saves, so a little bit less than a save per game. So maybe, like you said, the teams aren't being as offensively pressuring against the Guanacos right now. Maybe they are playing a little bit of lighter teams, but it's still no accident when you're getting 2 goals a game and shooting 41% from the field.
Well, the other thing is, right, like if you're putting up those offensive stats, clearly you have all the pressure. So maybe he couldn't have more than 11 saves. But again, like it's there's all these hypotheticals you could spin either way, right? And so it'll be really interesting. That's why we play the game, right? We got to see what happens. So I'm excited. It's interesting.
Alrighty, Rob, you ready for some good old rival breakdown?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move into it. All right, at the top of rival, you're sitting pretty with the Vikings alone in first at 8-0. And then you have a whopping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-way tie at 6-2 between the Hot Wings, Matzo Marauders, Polar Bears, Necrotic Nerds, Tardy Tortoises, Swiss Swindlers, and the Werewolves. That is a lot of parity. Then you got a bunch, 2 more teams at 5 and 3 right below them. And then another, what looks like 10 teams at 4 and 4. So this tier, much like veteran, is just waiting to be shaken up. One match day separates the team in 30th from the team in second. So we will definitely, undoubtedly see some shakeup throughout this.
Before I bounce us back to Castercam here, I do want to point out 4 of the top 5 are all lunar. It's kind of wild to see such a distance so quickly, but hopefully
but that's
it's
only
not.
because.
Look, listen here, Rob. I've heard you talk a lot already. I'm getting my words out, sir. Let me get. I was saying, hopefully, we don't get to see one conference really go ham. That's all I was gonna finish saying. That's all I got.
But I would just like to kind of point out that despite that we have them ordered that way, there are 3 teams in Solar tied with 3 of those teams in Lunar. So it is actually pretty close to a 50-50 spread throughout the top 10. It's just we had them ordered that looked like it's Lunar dominant.
Just saying, looks pretty Lunar dominant.
It's because you put them in that order.
That's anyway. That's what the team standings show.
That's true. All at 6 and 2. Yes. Anyway, it's a lot of parity, and you're right. There's a lot of good teams in Lunar. Correct. I agree.
Fight me.
Yeah.
I'm staying out of the middle of this one. You guys can go
No. Don't worry about it. You are right. There's a lot of top-heavy teams in Lunar, right? Because if you look at the middle of this tier, there's a bunch of Solar, and there's a bunch more Lunar at the bottom. The bottom 3 teams in the entire tier are Lunar, and the top 4, as you were mentioning, are Lunar. So there might be a split there for the entire season. And it might kind of be a walk in the park to the playoffs for those top teams as they just farm a few from those 1 and 7 guys.
Yeah, but the thing you got to look at, too, for these bottom 3 teams, I mean, now I know Shark Attack currently under new management, but Shark Attack is always a franchise that is not afraid to make early moves to turn a season around. I really don't know much about Electric Mayhem's management, but they always seem to be an upper half franchise in the franchise standings. And then of course Abyss is always ready to make early moves as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if those three kind of shot up. Plus, if you're at the bottom, that means you're probably playing some of the teams that were at the top,
Yeah.
taking those games down. So you never know what's going to happen when you start playing the middle of the table teams. What I find interesting is if you went -2 this week, you are 22nd place or lower.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is just crazy to me. Normally that puts you at
Middle
17,
of the
18,
pack.
19, but
Yeah.
now you're just you're terrible this season.
Out of the
It's bad for
playoffs.
the mental. Very bad for the mental.
Yeah. But I think what K-Flip was saying in the chat earlier, it's going to be really interesting to see how they do the power rankings for this tier because of how close everything is.
We'll probably see some angry people every week. I mean, we did every time I was in Rifle, we'd always have people. Man, I'm pretty sure we would have been number one. We're 1 point better, and then we'll see more of that. I'm pretty sure throughout the season.
All right, off to Chally.
Off to Chally.
Kick us off.
All right.
Or Croc. My bad.
No,
that would
okay.
be Croc.
My bad. On me.
Topping the charts, we do have the Italian Battalion with Penne Patrol and Metal from the Elements tying up at 7-1. And then we've got a 4-way tie for third place at 6-2. Got, of course, Abyss, Panda Bears, and Zombies on the graphic, and Deceased, who just didn't make the cut. But they are all 6-2. And this is a little bit less parity in the rest of the standings that aren't on the screen in terms of you don't have a huge tie between a bunch of people with the same record. There's a pretty good chunk of, the top, the 6 wins, the 5 wins, 4, 3, 2, 1. Unfortunately, one of my teams is hanging out there in the bottom with only 1 win. But early in the season, we'll get the turnaround coming.
I just want to give a big shout out to somebody who's got 69.6 SPV, probably watching the podcast right now, Mr. Chulane. Killing it through week 1, man. I see you.
Got a great mustache, too. I think you make a good point, right? Like, obviously things are early and things can and will still change a lot. But there is what seems to be a little bit more of a spread, more even spread as well throughout the tier. So you probably will still see this movement, but I think it's shaping out in a way that there's a normal bell curve, right? The teams that are winning by a little bit, and then there's a little bit of a drop off, and the good teams win a few. The rougher teams lose a few. And it's not just super top heavy, super bottom heavy. So I think it'll be a pretty even spread throughout the entire season.
Yeah, it's Chally always seems to be like that a little bit, though. It seems like there's always a pretty good spread towards the top and the bottom, but as the season goes on, it seems like the middle is really packed. Like, it always seems like Chally has the most volatile playoff race towards the end of the season. And so that's what I'm excited to see going further into the season. But for this week, it looks like everyone has already kind of, like you said, taken that spread. See, was there any outliers in terms of conferences or division? Solar Embers got 2 in the top 5 technically.
Solar Ocean has every single team 5-3 or better.
That's going to be an interesting one.
That's going to feel really bad.
Every single division looks to have one team that's clearly like the best, one team that's pretty good, one team that's doing okay, and then one team that's, struggling through week 1. But there's a lot of parity. There's a lot of balance in this tier.
Yeah, just besides that Solar Ocean division they call out, we got 1 6-2 team, and the other 3 are all 5-3.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So it's just a 1-game race in that one.
They currently have if the playoffs started today, they would have 3 teams in the playoffs.
That'd be so rough to be the 4th team that doesn't make it, and you're also 5-3.
Feels bad, man.
And then that also brings up, something that gets brought up a lot that might be a good topic for later podcasts. A team that is 4-4 would be going into the playoffs right now, while a team that is 5-3 would be eliminated from the playoffs due to
Yeah.
division leads automatically getting their spot.
I can tell you from personal experience, if you're above 500 and you don't make the playoffs, it really hurts.
Yeah.
It really hurts. We went 33-31 in season 16, and we did not make playoffs. I was really bummed.
Should have won some more games, I guess.
You right.
Yeah.
You right. But that brings us into good old prospect. If you guys don't have anything else here for me, let's talk a little bit about the top 5 here. We've got the Undead, who are 7-1. Darkness, who are 6-2, Spaghetti Scouts and Pepperoni Pizza as well tied at 6-2, and then Envy from the Seven Deadly. What am I drawing a blank here?
Seven Deadly Sins.
Seven Deadly Sins at 5-3. Man, I am on fire tonight. It's hot. You know what? I'm just gonna blame it and say it's hot in this room.
I think similar to Chally, which I think has that parity we're talking about. Prospect is very evenly split right now, which I think is kind of rare for this tier. As it usually has fewer teams than some other ones, you usually see a few teams running away with it, right? You have only one team above 6-2 right now, so you do have one team that's 0-8. They may be looking to make some changes pretty quickly.
But there's no teams that are even 1-7.
Like, yeah, the second to what, 15th? Is it 17th? Basically, if you're not first or last, you're within one match day of each other, and that is crazy. That is a lot of variability within there.
Yep. And this is it's really nice because this is a good time to look at the standings, and everyone at this point knows, oh yeah, you're not playing a series of games, you're playing 4 different games, each one is going to count for your standings, but it's easy to lose sight of that in the middle of the table. And then you get to the end again, and it's like, oh man, if we would have just not had our mental chalk for those second 2 games of that series, we could have won even one game, or like you missed the playoffs by 1 game or 2 games. It's easy to see it now, and these teams have got to continue to look at it, because I think this is going to be, like you said, I think this is going to be pretty volatile as well.
Well, we're definitely entering the territory where the tier is no longer about who's the best in the first week, but who grows the most throughout the season as a player.
Yeah.
So you're going to see a lot of these really shift very quickly. For the Spaghetti Scouts, who started off so hot, they're going to want to make sure they keep their foot on the pedal. You know, same thing for the Undead. You don't want to relax. You want to make sure you're constantly growing and doing your best to get better, because it's not very hard for a team like the Prison Proteges at 14th in the manner of 3 weeks with a lot of replay reviews, coaching, just grinding it out as a team. You could potentially see that team take first.
Mm-hmm.
It's it seems like you're a big gap when you say, "Oh, I'm in second right now, man. It's a great start."
Oh, I lost him. Did you lose him?
I lost him too. Rob, you there? Life good, bro?
Quick, someone call somebody. We lost Rob.
I mean, I'm guessing Rob was getting at the point that it's, you can seem pretty complacent because you can look at it and go, oh, Rob, hello?
Yeah, I'm here. Don't worry
about it. Hey, welcome back, buddy. Welcome back.
My internet decided to not work. Anyway, I apologize. What was I talking about?
You were talking about how it's very easy to get complacent when you're in second.
Oh, yeah. And when you're in second to last, it can feel really bad. But literally in the matter of one match day, those entire things could flip, right? So as Croc, you were talking about, keeping that mental strong and getting that extra 1 game. If you can get 1 extra game every week, you are making the playoffs, right? Like, somebody isn't doing that. So you need to be the team taking that extra step, working to get even just 1 more game a week, not even 1 a match day. Right, but that adds up when you're trying to fight for that playoff spot, and it's 1 game, 2 game difference over the course of a season. Every single one you can get really does matter, especially when the tier is going to be this close.
And I wanted to shout out a couple of duos in the prospect tier on the we've got 3 teams that have 2 players on the All-Star candidate list already. So you got Undead with Effigy and Corey Draven. You got the Envy team with your Evil Twin and Citrus Stone. And you got the Funnel Webs with Lust Lizard and Tokify. So you have 3 teams right now that are just really crushing it in terms of individual player performance. I know the Funnel Webs weren't in the top. Envy was in the top, and Undead was in the top. So I think those are going to be 3 teams to kind of watch and have on your radar whenever you've got a duo that's already in the All-Star candidate list.
I got to add one more duo to that, because if you look at the inert anemones, oh, I got that right immediately. They have a duo who was on my prospect team last season, Bugs Bunny and Quaza GS. Bugs was an all-star candidate at the end of last season, so he made it through the entire season with a 70 plus RPV. He's going to be incredible in prospect. And Quaza went 5-3 in Chally. This isn't even a homer. This is just shouting out 2 guys as we're talking about like prospect duos. Like it's completely relevant. Good try though. But I think if you look at that, right, and we're already seeing these other duos, these guys deserve to be right there. And you've seen it for a season. They might have some better chem. So it'll be really interesting, because I think you're right that there's a lot of really, really strong pairings. And the X factor for prospect this season might be who has the best third man, especially in that lower tiers when that consistency from everybody really matters.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like it might even be accentuated even further this season.
Fair point. Fair point.
Yeah. On to the Tendy.
We are on to Tendy. Let's get it going.
Alrighty. Moving to contender, our top 5 consists of Gluttony and Dagon, one name we've seen before, tied for first at 7-1, and then a 2-way tie between the Wisps and Dread at 6-2, and then you have a 4-way tie at 4-4 between Cheese Pizza, Hippie Hunters, Devoured, and Gallery Guild. That is 4 teams. Oh, you also have 2 teams at 0-8. Oh wow. This is a really interesting tier. You have 4 teams at multiple games ahead of everybody else. You have 6 teams just in the very middle, and then you have 2 teams at the bottom that have failed to even win a game. So I don't really know what to make of this. What are your guys' thoughts on something that has such an interesting take so early?
This is kind of what I expect out of a lot of the really low tiers like Prospect, Contender, and Ami, is just seeing, like, you were bringing up how Prospect, it was weird that every team was so close. This is kind of what I expect, is you see players that are either diamonds in the rough, probably either recent demotes or
real
promos.
diamonds.
Yeah, real diamonds that are either killing it or struggling in the tier, and it's really tough because like the difference in rank is so palpable. You can tell. And you can definitely tell when a team is clearly the best and a team is clearly the worst. And you'll probably see more of this as the season goes on.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good way to put it. With tiers like these two, I feel like it's 30% about the draft and the offseason, who you get onto the team, but it's 70% about, okay, these guys in amateur contender and getting into prospect are so malleable, and if they train properly and if they play as a team, they can just absolutely run away with the tier. You're talking, you go from slow aerials to fast aerials, you go from rotating near post to far post, all of a sudden you're top 3 seed in some of these tiers. Just you never know what's going to happen until midway through the season. You see who's been grinding, see who's been playing together. And most of the time, you see those teams and you know who's going to be there at the end. Like Dagon, we were pretty sure they were going to be there at the end last season. I think Devoured was a really good team last season that people were already talking about week 2, week 3. And it's really interesting to see with these tiers compared to other tiers where the 5th seed can sometimes go out to the finals and win the championship. Whereas in these tiers, you're almost always looking at your 1 or 2 seed winning the championship.
Kind of piggybacking off that, because you make a very good point about the top teams normally being very strong. The Hippie Honors are currently 4-4. In match day 2, they swept, so they got 4 straight wins. In match day 1, they were perfect swept by the 7-1 Dagon. So this team that has the capacity to 4-0 another team in this tier was perfect swept themselves, right? So that says a lot about Dagon. And they did set all these contender records last season, but it seems like I don't know how many players, if any, that they're returning. I think that's just their fourth man.
I don't.
But
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Shattuck, Tech 4, and oh my god, I'm forgetting the third man.
Sugar Biscuit.
Sugar.
That's
I'm
the
pretty sure
homie.
all three of them got promoted.
Yeah, they did. And so Illusion Chaos is the only one remaining. And so it'll be, I mean, it's an entirely different roster, but if any franchise can tell you how to win in contender, it's that one. And if any GM can, it's the one who just played through it. So if there is anyone who can just repeat success with an entirely new roster in this tier, it's probably Tech with that team right there.
The only thing that I will say that you probably got to keep an eye out are the Wisps from the Monster Mash. The past 4 seasons, Misty, on whatever franchise she has been in, has taken whatever franchise that is their contender team under her wing. And I think every single season that team has made playoffs and done a pretty good job of going out through it. And they've got a strong start now. And with her affinity for the contender tier and Frosty's just general kind of demeanor when it comes to thinking through things, very analytical kind of person, doesn't care what you think subjectively or emotionally. He'll just tell you what's the best on paper and based off what he sees. I think the Wisps could be the dark horse kind of powerhouse team. I mean, they're not really a dark horse right now at 6-2, but I think it's one that people aren't going to look at as closely, that they should probably keep their eye on.
They're also led by a player that a lot of people thought should be in prospect this season, Raichu.
Yeah.
Right? So they seem to have the intangibles and the talent. So it'll be interesting to see how the top half of this tier shapes up as we move forward.
God, dude, I wanted him for our team so bad. As soon as I saw he didn't get double promote from amateur prospect, I was like, we need to get that man. But he signed so fast to Misty's franchise. Like it. Oh, gosh darn it, dude.
So to the best tier.
Absolutely.
To the
Boom's the
best
highest
tier.
skill ceiling.
We are bringing you the amateur top 5 standings. We've got Surprise and Nightfall tied at 7-1 from the Elements and Shadows. Bakery sending their team Bunts of Steel to third place at 6-2, and then a two-way tie for fourth place with the Skater Skellies and the Praetorians from Ghoul School and the Sovereign. And I think this is the first time since Premiere there wasn't a tie at fifth that cut people off the graphic. So everyone in the top 5 actually makes the graphic here. It very strong start for the Element of Surprise and the Nightfall. Going pretty solid up until the halfway point of the tier where it kind of starts to fall off. You have 3 1-7 teams. House Salads, Alfredo Army, and Sketch Squad. Definitely going to need to be a big turnaround there. I haven't gotten a chance to look at the RPV, but I bet at least on one of those top 2 teams, we've got some super.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
So on Nightfall right now, you have 3 players in the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 3 players in the top 9 in RPV. You have 2 players in the top 5, and you have number 1 at 107 is Technic Music. So this might be a runaway. If a player can put up an entire season with a triple digit RPV, it's kind of chalked. Granted, small sample size. They've only even played 6 of their 8 games, but it's hard to accidentally put up 107 RPV.
And
Let me
not to
pull up
mention,
those
right?
stats.
He's got 3 MVPs out of the 6 games he's played. 24 shots on net with a 50% shooting percentage. So averaging 2 goals a game. And also 8 assists per game in those 6 games. So over an assist per game, producing by putting the ball in the net and probably by putting the ball in front of the net. Just looking on the paper, without seeing any gameplay, Technic Music strikes me as a guy who's probably just there all the time to hit the ball around the guy in front of him. And that's all he has to do.
He averaged 70 more points per game than anyone. Yeah, go ahead, boss.
Have we ever actually explained what RPV is?
Real player value.
Yeah.
If you're if
It's
you
the
are
the
familiar,
RSC performance value.
yeah, same thing, whatever. If you are, that's not, I just, stat-based value is SBV. I got whatever. If you're familiar with SBV and IDR, those are the two stats that we've been using for some time, SBV beforehand, to kind of quantify a performance in a one-number metric. Think player efficiency rating in basketball, QB rating in football, right? PFF grade. So what we do is we take those two stats and then divide it by 2 because they're both good stats, and the average of those two is your RPV or RSC player value.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you before. We've
All
always
good.
talked about SPV because it's really it's
Yeah,
been
yeah,
around
yeah.
forever. IDR's been around for 3-4 seasons. I feel
4
like.
seasons, something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was still pretty fresh for a lot of people. And then RPV, I'm pretty sure this is our first season like actually
Yeah,
using RPV to quantify anything. So
absolutely.
I just wanted to make sure we
No, good
clarified for
point.
our viewers.
Yeah.
Um,
And their new spreadsheet that is in the league info of the Discord for everyone to go look at. Their spreadsheet for the RPV sheet is really nice and easy to look at. It doesn't have as many stats as the SPV sheet does, but you can find it. I think on the SPV import tab. No, never mind.
Tulane
But you can still go find it.
Tulane makes a great point, which is that a surprise has a surprise. Blossom hasn't been to a match day yet, and they finished with a number 6 SPV in amateur last season. So a player that we can expect to be pushing for an all-star spot hasn't played yet, and that team is 7-1. So even though
Yeah.
Nightfall has all 3 of those players with those really high stats, and I don't know, we'll see. This is gonna be really interesting to look at and see how it develops with all this talent.
I do want to point out though, one player last season, your girl is my side hoe, posted an incredible SPV and IDR last season. They were number 1 in both categories. Did not win the chip. Amy is definitely one of those tiers where, as much as it is for a runaway player, it doesn't seem like one player really makes the team. I mean, Raichu and Kakashi Rage and Super Threes were the winning team. I know Raichu had a really good SPV last season, but they were, in my opinion, the better team as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
But is that everything we've got for the tier breakdown, right?
Yeah,
I think so.
I think that's just about it. Yeah.
That should move us on to kind of recapping a little bit about the streamed games this week. On Monday, we only had one series. T-Sant and I opened it up for the season, with Strawberries and the Shock. Strawberries led by Dondo, Shock led by Enigma. My guys, that was an incredible series to cast all the way through. It was so close every step of the way.
Yeah, it was crazy to watch. And I think the crazy part is that these are 2 of the best teams in the tier, in my opinion. I think you have some players that you have at least 4 players in here that you expect to put up really significant stats. And Bubbles, Enigma, Lilo, Dondo, Shinx isn't someone to sleep on, and neither is Yagi, right? So like this is a whole lobby of people putting up numbers. And it was what's really interesting. What Chally oftentimes struggles with is more defensive things, right? Like a lot of people practice aerials, but Chally's where the team play and defense really becomes a thing. And these 2 teams did an incredible job, especially for their tier, of just bending and not breaking, right? There was so much back and forth and so many goal line saves. And I think it was a very, very, very impressive performance from both, even though the Strawberries pulled out the 3-1.
Well, there was far too many amazing saves. I mean, Lilo had so many pinch saves off the post. I mean, it was T-Sant and I were both calling it out. Like we're used to seeing Chally have a lot of people who are great with mechanics. They're able to take it off the ceiling, maybe go for a flip reset here or there. They're really pushing the boundaries. But that series really all the way through and through was just solid defense. I mean, game 1, I think Dondo had the game-winning goal with 16 seconds left on the clock. Games 2 and 3 were 1-1, I think, going into overtime. Like, I don't think there was a lot of goals being scored the entire series up until game 4.
There were a total of 36 saves in the series, which is a lot. It's only 4 games, right? So you're talking about 9 saves a game coming out, and you only had a total of 12 goals the entire time. 0-1, 2-1, 2-1, and 3-2. And that's just not a very frequent score line in the lower tiers. So
No.
Chally's where people really start to get this concept of team play really solidified. And I think these two teams really have a leg up on a lot of the rest of the teams in the tier.
Well,
You
like if
said it
you
was
go,
36 goals or 36 saves.
Yeah, I believe
yeah,
so.
if you go back and you look at those 12 goals, you look at the ones that went in, and they all look absolutely nuts. Like Lilo's ceiling shot to place it top left corner, where
Yeah.
nobody's like reasonably is going to save
Yeah.
that. I'm like, are we watching Chally? Like, are we? Because it's incredible. They're playing these two teams with how well they played and what I'm used to seeing in Chally. If they play the same way they've done like this way all season, we're going to see potentially 2 playoff teams by like easily.
Easily. For what it's worth, I also actually was planning to promote Lilo manually to the 4th player on my rival team this
I
season.
can see why.
Yeah, and so Lilo proving that might have been a good decision. And I mean, obviously dominating Chally. So, well, 1-3 here, but is going to have a great season.
Game 4
Yeah,
was rough though. Game 4, I
yeah.
mean, with Lilo DCing and then Enigma and God, who was the third for that team? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yegi.
Yagi, yes.
Yep.
The fact that Enigma and Yagi were gonna have to hold out for a minute 30 to prevent the 3-2 comeback, like
Yeah.
for the first minute rolled by and T-Sand are like, oh my god, they're actually keeping the ball out of the danger zone. It's off the third. It's past the half court line. They're really just keeping the pace. I believe, yeah, I believe Dondo got a demo within the last 5 seconds to open up the goal. It was a beautiful play, but ooh, my man, getting that demo at the 3-2 to even
Yeah.
it up to our OT.
Another thing I wanted to point out about this series was 36 saves, 12 goals. So that accounts for 48 of the shots. There were 66 shots registered in that series. So as much as it was a great goal line play by both teams, especially from the Shock to stay in it for as long as they did, you got to wonder what would have happened if they would have hit the net on 2 or 3 more shots per game, right? Would those saves have been there, or were they misses, or were they more like passes
Yeah.
off the board? I can't really remember going back now because when I did the numbers in my head, it didn't seem right. It seemed like they were shooting a little bit more accurately, but it doesn't seem like they were as accurate as I thought they were
They
based off.
shot
There was a lot that
Strawberries
were
were
like crossbar posting.
18.4% and Shock shot 17.8%. So both
Yeah.
teams shooting under 20% for the entire series. So I think you make a really good point, right? Which is that it comes down to not only who's making those saves, but if you can continuously apply that pressure with on target shots. That's the
Mhm.
important part, right? Is applying that pressure and getting those shots on target, it eventually will break. So maybe if one of these teams can just slightly clean up their shooting just a little bit, right? All of that pressure will lead to so many more goals.
Who do you guys, if you were to pick one of these two teams today, like yes, it ended 3-1. It probably would have ended 2-2 if Lilo didn't DC.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys had to pick right now, which team is going to make it much further in the playoffs, who are you taking and why?
I'm taking the Strawberries. I think that the Shock are a much more annoying team to play against because they are fast. Enigma, 1600 speed. Lilo,
Yeah.
1580 speed.
Yeah.
Yagi, 1425. A little bit more kind of your average or normal. Strawberries, though, they were able to play this really fast team and they played it well. They got the ball around their fast challenges. Dondo with 1430 speed. Wanna buy Bubbles, who can be fast at 1400 flat, and Shinks at 1377. You get a team that's not as fast as Shock, and you put them against Strawberries, give them space on the field, they can be faster. And they've already shown their ability to play faster in terms of decision making and still be able to pull out the win. So I would have to say Strawberries probably are going further down the line, but I would want to play Shock a whole lot less.
I I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think when you look at this, right, I want to be able to project what is going to happen for the rest of the season. One, we know that Bubbles is an incredible Jolly player. Last season, they put up an 80 IDR in 41 games, and they're only looking to improve. I am on the Garden, so I do help them with coaching, but they are constantly asking for it, right? And so whether I think I'm a great coach, that is obviously biased, but regardless, these guys are constantly looking to improve, and that's what is really standing out to me. Is that even earlier today, literally, Dondo was like, "Hey man, you around for a replay review?" I think they're literally all in the team chat right now. I think they're in a scrim. Like these guys are grinders, and I love the way that they think about the game. They think about it differently than a lot of Chally players. You're talking about speed is a very big thing that I think a lot of Chally players struggle with is not necessarily going fast, but knowing when to go fast. And what they do an exceptional job of is thinking. They think so much about, should I turn this way? Should I go for this ball? Should I pass this ball? Am I going fast enough? Should I be going slower? And so not only are they constantly looking to improve and constantly getting repetitions in, but they're doing it the right way. And I think that's going to carry them to the next level. I think this Shocks team, they could beat anyone on any given day, right? But if you're looking for that level of consistency, I just think it's going to be found there with the Strawberries. I think it just comes with experience, and they're right there.
And one little final piggyback to throw on that is if you go look at the small pads that were picked up by all the players, you had Bubbles with 78 on average and Dondo with 70 on average. If they're able to pick up that much boost against a team like Shock, who is
Yeah.
clearly having to use a lot of boost to go that fast, they're always going to be on the field with boost, which is just a danger to whatever team
Yeah.
is playing against them if they can consistently have that much boost.
There's some thinkers, man. They just cover space. They do it efficiently. They're not going out of their way. And I think you make a great point, especially in a lobby where all of this unnecessary movement is happening. Making sure that you always have boost to capitalize on those openings it might be and very possibly could be the difference between a playoff win and a playoff loss once you get there in Jolly.
Oh yeah.
You know, I can't disagree with either of you guys. I mean, the Strawberries for me look like the more technically abled team. They definitely played better possession. I'm not downing Lilo in any way, shape, or form. Lilo looked amazing that series, but you guys have already said it. Strawberries really do look like the better long-term team here.
It's consistency, right? Like, I think especially in the lower tiers, I think I already said this on this podcast, but consistency is king. And especially even as you get higher, it still remains true. And so, yes, right. I think Shock can hit more crazy shots at a better rate than Strawberries. I think they might get more demos. They might catch you off guard more. As you were saying, Croc, they would be really annoying to play against. But the same way that defense wins championships in real sports, it's consistency is what you're looking for. And the consistency wins championships. So they might not win a series 10-1 in terms of goals. But as we saw this time, they went 3-1, and all three of their wins were by one goal. So they show up when they had to, and they didn't make the mistakes, and it's clinical. And I think that's how you win in this tier.
For sure. But, you know, that really covers the Strawberry Shock. I think it's about time we cover the absolute beatdown that occurred on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Well, let's not call it an absolute beatdown. Right? Three games were one-goal games.
This is true.
Game 4 was a Brazil. Game 4 did not look great, but I did actually watch this series. I would not comfortably call games 1, 2, and 3 beatdown for the Viperfish. But I would say that they absolutely looked like the better team.
By quite a bit, honestly. Like there were a couple key mistakes that really led to some Tarbage goals from what I was watching, but for the most part, Lyrics was playing absolutely nuts all series, disgustingly good. And I was kind of sitting there going, I expect an Ante to be, from previous seasons, to be that guy, to be Lord Himothy when he enters the Premier field, but I really didn't expect Lyrics, who I don't know much about. I don't know anything about this person. They come out and they just drop 585, 582
Something like that, yeah.
every game. Like, that's nuts.
So I was looking through the stats through this one, and one thing that I thought was really really interesting to me is that P-Man on Tarbage Grux was the top percentage of offensive third for the Tarbage Grux, but only had a total of 4 shots all series and no goals on those shots. So not very productive in the offensive end, and it makes me wonder if he was playing like this kind of floating up, looking for the redirect uh, kind of style of play. Because you got Ante, who had 17 shots, still only shooting 24%, but still at least putting some balls on net, putting some pressure on. And then of course you had Boog McCrug, who had a much higher production rate at 80%, but still only 5 shots on goal. So they're spending time in the offensive zone, but they're not really creating chances.
Yeah, I think especially at the higher levels, you see that really, really get capitalized on. So I think you make a really good observation here, right? Which is someone could say, look at the points and say, oh, he had fewer points. He just should have done more. Or all of this, right? These guys didn't shoot well enough. Anti shot 20%, whatever, right?
Mm.
But what I think you're identifying is a cause and something that can lead to things kind of snowballing. And especially at this level when it's just counterattacks happen so quickly. If you are lingering up for a touch and you, even if you're in the right spot and have a phenomenal idea, you might just have some dude moving at the speed of sound coming through the midfield that you never thought he would challenge from that angle. You're dusted, you leave your team in a 2-on-1, and these guys, they are clinical on the counter.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe, I mean, that I could really see exactly what you pointed out, that being most forward and not being so productive while doing so, leading to this being that 4-0, being that 1 goal difference in those 3 games.
Yeah. And then also just a little cherry on the top for those stats, 30% in front of the ball, highest in the
Mhm.
lobby for that series.
Yeah.
And
I
then
would,
you got Boog McCrug with the best shooting percentage from their team and arguably the most production. Now, yeah, Ante, who of course was crushing shots on net, just
yeah,
couldn't get them converted. But Boog McCrug was over 3,000 units from the ball, the furthest person from the ball during the series. So I think you've got your smart player there. I don't know a lot of these players very well. I think you probably have your smart player in Boog and kind of like your offensive menace in Ante. And I think P-Man, as long as they find a way to play in between that
yeah,
and mesh and kind of be the glue that brings those two together
fill
while
the
also
gaps.
still being productive himself, I think that could completely turn around the start that the Tarbage Grux have had.
Well, for sure.
I
And
think,
sorry, I was gonna say for sure you're right. I mean, you need somebody who's willing to float, who's willing to play a little bit of 2, a little bit of 3, and occasionally take some shots to really mix things up and keep a defense on its toes. I mean, it's what separates a decent team from an incredible team. You get one person who's willing to rotate a little further back, let Boog rotate up, maybe take a
Mm-hmm.
shot, or maybe put it high off the backboard. Because I've seen Ante can elevate incredibly fast to
mhm.
get to that ball. We'll see. We'll see what the future has to look for in terms of transactions. I don't think I've seen anything yet, but you gotta wonder if it's weighing on the GM's mind here. Like, hey, do I make this change? Do I make this, or do I let it work? Try to work itself out.
Yeah, and
So,
that's unpredictable with Bex, huh?
yeah, yeah. Couple interesting things here as well from these stats. First, Ghosty shooting 6 for 8, right? That is,
Yep.
speaking of clinical, 75% over 4 games in a premier lobby is nuts. And that alone could be that difference, right? If those shots are just top corner and unsavable, that's that gap. And the second thing is that this Tarbage Grux team, the one with Ante on it, is 4-4. So they just got swept, but they went 4-0 the first match week or match day. Something to note from that is that Ante had all 4 MVPs. So kind of what you're getting at, and I understand the Premier salary cap. It works a little bit differently to where you kind of expect your top player in Premier to be putting up those statistics, right? but 100% MVP rate. If Ante is getting countered a little bit, if he shoots 4 for 17 here, he's providing a ton of pressure, right? We just are going to need someone to step up and finish a few of those. Boog and P-Man combined for 9 shots over these 4 games. And so I think you just need a little bit more offense out of the guys behind him. And that might even just be a stronger second man positioning, right? Just being there to finish up a shot that is just barely saved. And we'll see if that ends up coming out from this team moving forward.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Anything else interesting you saw, Bass?
No, I mean, not really. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't watch the first game. I was getting stomped on in comp myself.
Fair enough.
So, when I tuned in after, I was like, I'm done playing Rocket League. I tuned in, saw game 2, saw game 3, and there were a couple times where the Tarbage Grecs looked like they were going to mount a run, just get some goals going. And then it just really seemed to get shut down very quickly in the midfield by Lyrics, by Ghosty, both just playing pressure the entire time. I think you're right in your assessment that P-Man was just drifting up in no man's land a lot. That seemed to be what I saw. But outside of that, I think you're pretty on the money there.
I got one final thing to mention about this. In very stark contrast to that Chally series that we discussed, right, where each team shot under 20%. If you look at the Viperfish team, they shot 44%, 57%, and 75% respectively, which I'm pulling up their overall team percentage right now. But as a team, they were just unbelievably clinical, shooting 55% on 7.75 shots per game. So they scored over 4 goals on less than 8 shots a game, which is just, there's got to be something going on there, or they're just hitting unsavable shots. Because you just don't see a team shoot 55% like that.
Well, I've seen the way Ghosty plays. It's almost entirely possession and setting up that second touch. I mean, it's lethal. I mean, we had a clip last season with the exclusive 8. I think it was like week 11 or week 12. It's actually in our intro where he comes off the wall, fakes the aerial, goes for the ground pinches it just so perfectly that it like crossbars in. Like his control of the ball is immaculate, and that makes sense why it's reflecting so well on the shooting percentage.
That's a crazy shooting percentage for a Premier lobby.
Yeah. Just 3 people above 50%.
Yeah, they're just, and even on volume too, right? Yeah. Like it's not like it's just shooting. Like Boog, yes, he shot 80%, but that was 4 for 5.
Right.
I would take Ghosty's 6 for 8 over that in a heartbeat. Like, what was Lyrics? 7 for 16?
4 for 17, I believe.
I think that was Ante.
Oh yeah, that was Ante. Lyric was
7 for 6. Yeah, that's just like, even on that volume, yes, it's under 50%, but it's 44. Like, you can't score on every shot if you're providing that much pressure. Like, it is just unprecedented volume of goals on those shots, right? Like, that just doesn't happen. I wonder if that's going to be repeatable for them throughout the season. If they just clicked to a different extent and have figured something out with their play style, like, I'm going to be keeping an eye on their shooting percentage as the season goes.
It would be interesting to go back and look at the shots too. Like, take the 9 shots that didn't go in and see why they didn't go in, and see if you changed something up in order to get those other 7 to go in. But yeah, I definitely agree. Volume. Who cares if you're shooting 44% while you have 3 other people with higher percentages above you? You still scored the most goals in the lobby for that series.
I mean, their team missed 1 more shot than Ante missed for the entire series. They missed 14 shots, I believe. Yeah. Lyrics missed 9. Ghosty missed 2. You're at 11. And then DMT Goobs missed 3. So you're at 14 shots that they missed. Ante went 4 for 17. He missed 13. Their entire team. Ante is easily one of the best players in RSC. Their entire team missed only 1 more shot than this one player did. Like, that's just, you just can't. I don't know. I don't even know. They must have been open nets. It must have been something. That is an unprecedented high number for that. 14 misses is more than that's crazy. That's that's nothing.
Oh
So
man, what
I
a series!
Yeah.
speaking of stream games, I'm moving us here into break. But speaking of stream games, my God, man, I I don't know how to fix it, man. We have that 11:30 slot, and it seems like for a while, for the opening week, nobody wanted to touch it. I asked like I think 20 teams. Like I was like, hey, you're playing so and so. Are you on the play? Yeah. And then I asked the opposing team. Nah, it's way too late, man.
Mhm.
I don't I don't know if it was just opening week the way it is, but week 2 looks a lot better. We've definitely had a lot more teams filling it out. Do you guys have a good idea, like either shifting games to a different day or just like is there a way to actually make that work?
So before we transitioned, boss, I was thinking about potentially more than a couple times potentially doing stream games on a different day, because it might be more convenient for the players. The only reason I never made that swap was because of the audience, right? Like you have so many people that are just done with RSC, and if they're staying on their computer, it's no big deal to throw up the stream and like come and hang out with the community. The only other idea that I had that may still work is putting it before scrims. So people hop on, they're watching the stream games, and then after the stream games, they go straight into their scrims. Kind of gets them hyped up a little bit for RSC without giving them extra game fatigue from playing for too long. But I
Well,
have
that's
no
why
idea
like
how it would work. It's
that, that's why like personally I couldn't figure out a path that actually made sense because going before scrims, if you're a West Coaster, you're getting real early in the day from when you're like, hey,
Yeah.
you have to be on stream ready to rock and roll, and
Yep.
people are going to want to warm up before those games as well. Because I mean, I don't want to go on stream and get smacked. Like I would prefer to do the smacking. I don't want to be the one getting steamrolled by Rob. So, but it, I I don't think there's a viable way to make it happen, and it's just going to be a problem that we're going to have to deal with long term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the best idea is to have it be a different day, but I think it's almost like starting a business. You're gonna operate in the red for a little while before you start operating in the green again.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna take a huge chunk. It's gonna be a huge chunk of negative impact before the smaller positive impacts start building back up to where it is now.
And I wonder what at what point does that overlap, right? Like at what
Mhm.
point would the change, how long would it take that change to be more effective than what we have now? And would it even overtake it? Would it be worth it to go take all of those steps backwards just to hope that something can overtake it? And so I think it's a really interesting proposition I do agree that having it like I think having it connected to matches is a really positive thing. It increases definitely the amount of people coming from directly from RSC. But I also think that you guys are posing a very interesting question that there could be something out there that we aren't thinking of.
Yeah, pretty much. The way I thought about it when I was doing media head stuff is until the community overwhelmingly wants it to be different, I was going to keep it the same simply because I don't want the ideas of one person to just throw a wrench into the
Yeah,
community and how everything's been working unless I can guarantee that it's better. And that is just one thing I knew I couldn't guarantee it would be
yeah,
better.
that makes a lot of sense.
Cool. Sorry, I had nothing really scheduled for the break, so I was like, I'll see if I can farm my
Oh,
problems
you're
out to
good.
third parties here. But that should bring us into our last segment of the night. We're going to talk about week 2 predictions. We've got 3 matches currently slated to be on stream. We don't have a 4th yet. We have one for Monday, should be an AMI series. Bunts of Steel and Nightfall. Gonna be.
The 7-1 and a 6-2 team.
That's
Why
going to be a
does this
fun
have
one to watch.
Enigma? Why did I put Enigma as the captain for that team?
Yeah, that'll be fun. Nightfall is that team that we were talking about who has that Technic music guy who's
Hmm.
putting up these
Oh,
crazy stats. And Bunts of Steel is 6-2, just one game behind them. So it'll be really interesting to see that matchup.
K-Flip, my boy, I did not see that. Another rival matchup? We're getting another rival matchup.
Huge.
Nice.
We're getting a second series on Monday. It's going to be Phantoms and Vicunas. Phantoms are, I believe, let's see here. Let me get my team standings.
Phantoms are 4-4, and who do they play? Lacuna?
Yep.
Vicunas.
Oh, Vicunas. I see that. They're also 4-4.
That'd be a
That'll
good
be a fun
matchup.
It's
one.
2 4-4 teams. That'll be interesting.
Vicunas. Who is that? Oh, the herd.
That's the
what I'm
herd.
thinking. That's,
Some type of alpaca.
yeah, I'm sure. Oh, I know one thing we didn't really talk about when we were talking about amateur earlier is the Bunts of Steel players. The two people that are kind of up there in RPV have played all 8 games, so a little bit of a larger sample size than the Nightfall players who have each played 6 that are up there. But I mean, Slash Fabo at the 72.5 with 6 games played is surrounded on either side by Get to the Choppa and Sticks from Bunts of Steel with 68.3 and 80 RPVs respectively. Now again, we talked about how just because it's 6 games doesn't really matter for Technic Music because he rushed it. It is not
And he's
maximum
6-0.
RPV.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be really interesting to see that with Sticks and Choppa, they both look like they're kind of offensive players. And then you go all the way down quite a ways to find Taskcare Reborn. I'm really sorry if I just destroyed that name.
Man, his name is Casca Reburn. Come on,
Yeah.
man.
He's friends with
Taskcare
Dondo,
Reborn. Oh,
right?
okay.
Yeah, he's also my friend.
Oh, yeah, I know that dude. I've been in the
Sorry.
DC
Cascara
with him a few
Reborn.
times.
Taskcare Reborn.
I'm putting that down. Casca played
Uh,
last season for Elastic. He was their 4th man.
Okay.
He's kind of like a player coach because he understands the game and the rotational sense very well. Like if you look at him for as an AMI and you look at how he rotates, it doesn't look like an AMI player at all. His mechanics aren't great, but he's only been playing the game for about 2.5-3 months now. So I mean, he's not bad at all. He's a great pickup for any team. Bare minimum got cut from his team and got picked up by the Bakery, but the Bakery looks like they're going to be a solid team. I think.
Yeah, I think just with this matchup, who do you guys have winning? You think it'll be Nightfall, or you going with Bunts of Steel?
Nightfall, I mean, them with Technic Music haven't lost yet, and he's putting up in unbelievable stats. And so until I see that change, I can't pick against them. Right? Like I think I'll go 3-1 Nightfall. I won't go 4-0. I think that Technic will get his first loss. Like this team is clearly not a pushover. But until this dude or this person rather loses a game, I can't predict that they're going to lose a whole series.
Fair enough. I will actually have to counter you and say that I think it's
Interesting.
probably I would lean towards a 3-1 for Bunts of Steel.
Mhm.
But I would actually probably be more comfortable calling a 2-2. And the
Mhm.
only reason is because I don't think Nightfall has been pressured enough at all.
That's very valid, yeah.
And I'm only looking at stuff on paper. I've never seen any of these 6
Yeah.
players play on the field at all. But if you look at the stats from our 2 higher performers on Bunts of Steel, you're looking at 14 saves and 12 saves, while they're both also producing offensively. Whereas with
Yeah.
Nightfall, you've got Technic, who's only had to make 5 saves, and Slash Fabo, who's only had to make 4 saves. So they haven't been under pressure. Their defensive rotations haven't been tested, whereas the Bunts of Steel have had to play offensively, and clearly they've had to play some sort of defense. And so it's been tested, and they're kind of tried and true there. I think it could definitely go either way. I think either team could sweep, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I would say it's probably a 2-2, but if I had to pick a 3-1, I'd probably go Bunts of Steel.
Something that I didn't notice was that Nightfall actually has all 4 of their players with above a 62 RPV.
Mm-hmm.
They've all played at least 4 games. Super Threes is 7-1. Europe is 3-1, and then Slash Fabo is 5-1, and Technic is 6-0. So I think it's going to be really hard to. You might be able to take a few games off them, but if they have someone who is good enough to just 3-0 3-1, 4-1, just coming off the bench,
Mhm.
right? Like then, if they can hit a little play style shift and still maintain their level of talent, like it might be tough if they make those changes at the right time to really hit them back with your own move. Counter that.
What about you, Bus?
I am in agreement with you, Croc. I think it's either going to go 2-2 or 3-1 in favor of the bakery. And I'm not just saying that as somebody who's watched far too many replays at this point in time for the bakery. Listen, Rob, it's the same way you said, like, when you were talking about the Chally guys and how much they're
Yeah.
willing to really grind it out and get coaching
Mhm.
sessions. This Amy team has been all over it. They've been like, hey, let's get a replay in. Let's get some coaching. Let's talk about what's going on. And I don't know why it keeps happening, but Sticks and Only Slim have challenged me to 1v1s for no reason. I don't know what's going on there, but
Have you lost any?
No.
Okay.
All right. If any of you guys know
Oh,
Sticks or
God.
Only Slim, please tell them that we will be accepting DM screenshots of them beating
Yes.
Boston
Yes.
1v1.
Yes.
I told them,
Absolutely.
I was like, you beat me in a 1v1. Like, we'll get you some kind of reward, but it hasn't happened yet. I'm just saying. Thank God I didn't lose to an Abby in a 1v1. Oh, God. But no, I think 2-2, 3-1 in favor of the bakery. Somewhere in that ballpark will be good. But let's rock through the other match day that got scheduled to literally right within the last half hour or so. Phantoms Vicunas, did we put a actual gauge on who's going to be like what the final standing's going to be?
Really quickly before we move forward, I actually just noticed this. Nightfall currently has the players who are first, second, third, and fourth in assists
Oh, wow.
at
Nice.
8, 6, 5, and 5. Or 8, 6, 6, and 5. And there's no one else on any other team with. There's one dude with 5. He's on Bunts of Steel. Shout out that guy. Shout out Get to the Choppa 5. But that type of pressure, those assist numbers, having the top 4 players in assists is crazy. Anyway, sorry. We can go back to the other team.
You're good. You're good. Phantoms, Vicunas, Crocs. Start us off. We'll work right to left here. What is this series going to look like? What's the final score?
I think Phantoms are probably going to take the series in a 3-1. I don't know about a 4-0 sweep, but it is possible. Surge is just performing really well. Number 4 in SBB right now. Number 2 if you only take people that have played more than 4 games. Producing pretty well, shooting 40% on 25 shots. Has 6 assists in his 7 games. Clearly the kind of front runner for the Phantoms there, but also followed up by Funk. Funk's only played 3 games, but still in the 60 RPV category. IVI Ghost is probably your number 2 guy. 7 games played, 19% shooting percentage right now on 21 shots, but I've seen Ghost play before, and I know you can bury him behind the net. And then you go take a look at the Vicunas, and they don't look bad. They just don't look as good. I think your front runner Squeegee is a really solid front runner to have. He was actually on my short list for the draft, so he'll probably be able to make some production happen on the field. But everyone else is just very middle of the table. It looks like stats wise, and I don't recognize everybody, but I recognize a couple of the players, and I think it's probably gonna end up staying that way. So 3-1 Phantoms over Vicunas is my final prediction.
Fair enough.
I
Fair
agree.
enough.
I agree for all the same reasons that you do. It seems like when I don't know a team, I like to look for statistical indicators, right? Do you have a player who can take over? Do you have a player who has already taken over? Is your second and third player that far behind your first, right? Like, there's these things that can say that kind of tell you just exactly how good that these teams and players are performing. And it seems like Surge, at least through the first week, is performing at a higher level, and I don't know if Vicunas is going to be able to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if they can, obviously anyone can win any series. But I think that based on the information that's in front of us with both of these teams, putting up the statistics that they have, having the exact same record, there are just a few more indicators for the Phantoms just being a little bit better. So I'm going to go 3-1 for them as well.
Everything I've seen, it just looks like it's going to be a 2-2 draw. Like, I'm not seeing anything that's like, oh, this team's clearly going to be dominant, or this team, I think it's going to be 2-2. I'll just leave it at that.
I think it's a very fair prediction to say that it could be a 2-2. Just if I had to pick a team that was going to edge the other one out, I would have to go with Phantoms.
I could agree with that.
It could be one of those things where one team could win 6-0 in game 1, and then the other team could win 6-0 in game 2. And then the next 2 games are both 1-goal games or something like that. These teams don't look very far apart from each other.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? Well, I guess we'll see tomorrow.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if it went a 3-1 either direction. A 4-0 either way, I think I would be so surprised by it, though.
Mm-hmm.
Going into Wednesday, we're going to get the matchup here. The
Carrots
4-0. And the Matza Marauders. Oh, man. I think there will be a 4-0 on Wednesday. I don't think it's going to be Carrots getting that 4-0.
Oh.
Well, I mean, okay. The Matza Marauders are...
I don't actually. It's 3-1, yeah.
I think it's going to be 3-1 in favor of Matza Marauders. I mean, if you look at them statistically, they are killing it. They're in that 7-way tie, 8-way tie for second place at 6-2. So I really do foresee a nice 3-1 action going their way.
Well, I personally disagree. I think it's a 3-1 the other way. Mainly because I think that Decky is probably the best player in the tier. I think that he was a first round pick last season. He was playing with his best friend's name is Doug, right? He's in vet now. Doug likes to go for the ball. And Decky is completely okay with that. So he kind of took a back seat for that season. And so he has a 15-32's peak. He's extremely mechanical. He's hit champ 2 and 1s. He's extremely consistent, and he's been really focusing on playing more controlled, right? Something that a lot of rival players struggle with. And I think that through any tier, if you just have the best player in the lobby, it just makes your life a million times easier. They might make a save that no one else could. They might hit a shot that no one else could. And it can be extremely demoralizing. It can swing a series, and it can not even show up in the statistics, right? So Adeki's been in Rival for 2 seasons, has won at least 36 games both times, and he's kind of let other guys cook. And I think this is going to be his season to pop off. And the Matza Marauders have a great top 2 right now, both putting up 65 plus RPVs, but you have something not far behind from the Carrots, and the numbers look close. I give it to who I think is the best player in the lobby.
I think I'm gonna just go ahead and disagree with both of you, and tonight call my first confirmed sweep. I think I'm gonna go ahead and call the sweep in favor of the I'm blanking on the team name, Matza Marauders. I think that if Laban is on, it's an easy 4-0 sweep. I think that if Laban is performing average, it's still a potential sweep. If Laban is off, then it's probably a 3-1 still in favor of the Matza Marauders. I only say that because Laban right now has 7 saviors out of 8 games, which is crazy. But then you got Blaniak with 3 cycles. I think Laguna has 4 or 5 cycles, or no, just 1 cycle. Who is it with 5 cycles? I think that was Decky actually when I was looking at Decky. No, it's not Decky. Logical. Okay, Logical has 5 cycles, so Logical is the good all-around player for the Carrots. Blaniak and Laguna seem to be kind of your more rounded glue kind of players. I know Blaniak likes to play very fast, very mechanical. Laban I've never seen play, but with 7 saviors,
that is a lot of saviors.
Yeah, and then also just crushing the RPV charts right now with 80 RPV. Also shooting 52.9 from the field on 17 shots. 27 total saves.
Yeah,
That is over 4 saves a game, guys.
that's a
That's
lot of saves.
crazy. So
But
that's
I
why
think,
if you can't get the ball by Laban, then I think
yeah,
it's an easy 4-0 sweep. But I think even if Laban's way off, just worst games that Laban's ever played, I still think you can potentially pull out the sweep if you're Monster Marauders because of your other performers. If not, I think you are looking more like a 3-1, but I'm going to lock in my 4-0 sweep call.
I would like to bring up one last statistic, which is that these are the only 3 players who are returning to Rival this season from the 2 teams that made it the farthest not named the Hammerheads. You have 2 of the 3 starters on a team that went up 2-0 on the Hammerheads in playoffs, and then you also have the team that lost, or a returning player from the team that lost to the Hammerheads in the finals, with the Carrots and Polaris combining essentially their rosters for this season. So I think you're right. Those stats from Laban are absurd, and you can either look at it as this man is a complete brick wall, or why are you giving up that much pressure? Right? Are you leaving the midfield completely open to where one player is sitting on the goal line and they just keep making great saves, right? But is that a recipe to win? And so I think either way, this is going to be a really interesting matchup. I think there's a lot of really interesting aspects to it,
Mhm.
which makes it a little bit more difficult to predict.
I think where you are correct, and is the pressure. Based
Yeah,
off what I know from these players, my guess is there's a lot of slight overcommits by the third, and then it's rushing back, and instead of cutting the play out in the midfield and getting 2 points,
yeah,
the play out at the goal line and getting 50 or 100 points and getting the save on the stat board. Maybe they're really good shots, and maybe they should have never been given up like that. Or maybe it's just a lobbed clear because the other team was under so much pressure they just lobbed it away, happened to
yeah.
be towards the net, and they just knocked it to the outside and took possession back. Either way, I think that this is a prediction that's right to prove me wrong. Just based off what
Yeah,
I think I'm right. I think I'm right. I like to
fair,
think I'm
fair.
right, but we'll see.
So the final matchup that we're going to talk about in the last kind of subject for the night, we're going to talk about the final matchup on Wednesday, the Ruthless Racket, who are currently 4-4, versus the Surge, who are 1-7. And I do want to point out before we get really far into this discussion, I was looking through transaction announcements, looking to see if the Surge have made any shifts. They have not. They are running effectively the same roster as they've had before. The Ruthless Racket, though, made a cut in acquisition today. They cut Say Nova and they picked up Fluffy Death. So, what are your guys' thoughts on the team, especially when they're 1-7 so far, doubling down and saying, "Hey, we're gonna stick with this. We're gonna rock it out."
Uh, I think it's good. I think it's good for the mental. It means they have a strong mental. It means that they're not shaken up by his poor start. Um, but if it doesn't go well this week, I think something probably has to change, right? Like if you go 1-11 or 2-10, like is this a roster that you think can turn around and go 10-2 to equalize that out, right? Like if you start 2-10, you can't just go 500 from there. You have to completely turn that around, and I think that's an underrated aspect of the early season. So this could prove to really bring these guys together and help them move forward as a unit. But it could also, there's a very real chance that if they perform poorly this season, they're in a hole that is really, really, really hard to dig out of.
I think you're right. I mean, I joined Chromium season 16 when they were 4-12, and even fighting back to 33-31 was an incredibly difficult undertaking because every single week we knew like, hey, this game matters. We have to win. If we don't, playoffs are just a little bit further out of reach. And it definitely did kind of mess with the mentality going into each game day. Like, hey, who's playing the best? We need them to be on your A game. Like, we need you in doing your best. And it put a lot of pressure on you. And I think you're right. I think this could be a make or break series for them where if they go ahead and say, yes, we're going to stick with it, and it turns out and turns into a good fashion, they win 3-1 or 4-0, they're going to rebound. Or if
Mhm.
they go ahead and say, hey, we're going to stick with it, and maybe they get 4-0 swept on stream, that's going to be the dagger where you pretty much go, yeah, this is it. We're cutting it. We're going to move on.
Yeah, I think two important things to note too here. One is that Surge played the Carrots, who we were already saying were a pretty good team, 3-1 by the Carrots. And then they got 4-0 by the Vikings, who are the number 1 team right now.
Interesting.
And the Vikings, I haven't looked at their stats, but I don't really know the players on that team.
They're probably pretty good.
Yeah. I know King. King is probably a veteran able player. Probably
7 cycles, by the way. 8 games, 8-0, 7 cycles for King. Yeah.
Holy, yeah. He's playing pretty well.
He is. So this is the first of what I want to start doing this season. A record watch, right? Like if you have 7 cycles in the first 8 games, let me pull up this number because this will be something that we can keep an eye on moving forward. In terms of rival, the most cycles ever recorded in a season is 29, and in the first match week, he is a quarter of the way there.
Wow.
So 29 by Plethoros, who is in Master with me right now, actually. Better than me. But 29 cycles. So let's see. Let's keep an eye on King with those 7 and 8 games. That is an absolutely absurd stat.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And to put it out even further, Kush W, who is also on the Vikings, is crushing King in RPV by like 15 points.
Oh, that's
King's
because
got 7 cycles, and he's got a teammate that's got 15 more.
Kush has 4 cycles in the 4 games that they've played.
Yeah.
So like, both of them have a combined roughly 90% cycle rate. So maybe Kush W is also on the cycle record watch, right? So that's gonna be. We'll see what happens with the Vikings, man. That team is. They look like they're a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah. Not to pull too much away from the stream match.
Yeah.
But to bring it back and say, due to those performances from the Vikings, maybe Surge aren't as rough of a spot as we might see them at on its face. But also at the same time, I still think that it's going to be a rough match for them. I think that not even skill wise necessarily, but you're coming in with the mental of going 1-7 the week before. That's tough to bounce back from. And then the last thing that I'll point out is that for the Ruthless Racket, on one of their match days, they did have a sub. They brought in Maddox Biggs, and Maddox Biggs and T-Gun were both on my franchise. And so they both played together. They have some chemistry together. That probably helped them out on a little bit on that 4-4 record. So maybe, and they felt the need to still make a roster change after that to pick up whoever they picked up, Fluffy Death, for Say Nova, which I thought was also interesting because Say Nova was the highest performing RPV player on that team with a 3-4 record. And honestly, just on paper, not sure why they cut him.
Yeah, I agree. And it was for Fluffy Death, who anyone can have any type of performance, right? But this player is 0-3 with an RPV 14 lower. And so it is definitely an interesting move on paper. Obviously, there can be chemistry issues. There can be other things going on there.
Right.
But it is definitely, most moves on paper make a lot of sense. This one is going to be kind of one to bookmark. We'll see how Fluffy Death does in that spot. Maybe they were picked up to be a 4th man. But it is regardless interesting to see someone who, at 3-4, not a bad record, putting up the best stats on your team. Usually that isn't the person to go.
Yeah, especially when your team's 4-4. So you're there for 75% of your wins.
Yeah. I'm hearing an incredible amount of justifications, Croc, and I'm not hearing a number from you. If you were to put a number to it, what's the series going to turn out like?
Oh, I thought I had already said that it was going to be 3-1 for the Racket.
For the Racket? Okay.
Yeah. All right. I don't think Surge bounces back to win the series, but I don't think that the 1-7 is a good justification for their skills, so I don't feel comfortable calling a sweep in that series.
Rob, what do you got here?
I it has to be the same thing. I do agree that Surge probably has just gotten a really rough hand dealt to them with the first couple teams that they've had to play. Um, but also, as a team that's 1-7, I haven't seen enough to give them credit to be able to predict them winning more games, right? Even statistically from their players, it's not like one is putting up a bunch of crazy stats in these losses, just like getting beat a little bit. None of them seem to be really putting up the numbers that would make me give me faith in a victory for them, right? And so I will give them the credit of bouncing back. I think that against a team that's 4-4, they can definitely take a game. They could definitely take more than that. But until I see a little bit more out of them, even with their rough hand, I'm gonna have to go 3-1 for Ruthless Racket.
Oh, all right. I would say personally, I really do think this is going to be a rebound week. As much as this is going to be a make or break week for the Surge. If you look at who the Ruthless Racket have played these last 2 weeks, they've played. Let's see here. I had it pulled up. I had just pulled it up. Where did it go? Matzo Marauders and the Hammerheads. There are two teams that they've played against. They've gone against a team that's now 6-2 and against a team that's 2-6. I wonder if their record is middling because they've been able to farm some easier games against a team that was totally rebuilding as compared to, say, the Surge that had to play against two very strong teams across the board. Both the Carrots being 5-3 and the Vikings being 8-0. There's not a lot of room to steal some matches there. I think the Surge might go 3-1 this week. I think there's definitely a chance.
Fair enough.
That's all I've got. I mean, if you guys have anything else for this series, otherwise we are all squared away for the night and we can wrap things up for week 19 of the podcast.
Yeah, go ahead and start wrapping up. They're asking about the goal differential, so I'm looking for trying to get the goal differential squared away for these two teams for our lovely audience members.
So before that, I would like to say one more thing, which is huge shout out to everybody in RSC, right? For this would never happen without you guys. So this is also, I would like to remind all of you to keep your mentals high, right? Even if you're starting 1-7, 0-8, it is a long season, and you don't have to be the best team in the league to win a championship. You just have to get to the playoffs and win those 3 matchups. So if you can get that record back to 500, if you can finish right there, there's a real chance that you can come out and surprise people. So don't feel too bad if you haven't started out too hot. And if you're at the top, don't get complacent. People catch up quick. So keep on improving, and you never want to give them an opportunity to make up that ground on you.
All right, so I do have the goal differential for the Surge. They are at a -19 right now, keeping in mind that they did have to play the number 1 team Vikings, who we pretty much just went over.
Yeah,
that
they're
going to
nuts.
be a crazy team to deal with this season.
And
Now
the Carrots, who are solid as well.
The Ruthless Racket had to play the Matzo Marauders though, so they didn't have a walk in the park necessarily to get their 4-4. The one thing I will say is that they also played the Hammerheads, who are down towards the bottom right now, I believe.
Imagine being excited about playing the Hammerheads in Rival.
It couldn't
Crazy.
be me.
That's crazy.
Oh, they're missing a game in the stats too. The Ruthless Racket and Hammerheads.
Interesting.
So that would be.
That's
I do not know. But they have both of their wins in there, so I will say that the stats that we're seeing for the RPV and stuff are going to be missing a win for them, because they had 1 win against the Matzo Marauders, and so that means they would have had a 3-1 against the Hammerheads. So I would take all of the stats that we just discussed for the Ruthless Racket and give them a tiny bump up.
Fair enough.
But their goal differential is going to end up being, without that last game that they won, they're sitting at a 0.
So they're the definition of a 4-4 team.
Yeah.
Makes sense. It'll be interesting to see how this goes. I think if they're batting even against a bunch of teams throughout this, I mean it'll be tough for the Surge, but I think they could probably get a few games out of them. But I still am going to go with that 3-1.
How did the Surge square away in season 17? Does anybody remember off the top of your heads?
I don't know if I'm thinking about the player or the team. I think I'm thinking about Surge the player. I'm like, yeah, Surge was pretty good.
Yeah. Last season in Rival, Surge went 35-29. I believe that was good enough to make the playoffs. It was. They won their division at 35-29.
Well, I knew they had struggled in season 16. I think they were second from the bottom. And then I know we talked about it last season with them kind of regaining a fair bit and just playing all around better. I definitely hope this isn't season 16 repeat. Because that was a very rough Surge team that went through a lot of FAs trying to find out what worked, and in the end, it did not get better all across the board.
That'll be, instead of channel points, Tulane, you can send me a direct donation to my PayPal, and I'll be sure Bob turns on the fireplace. Or I mean, Bob turns on the fireplace.
Yeah.
No, dude, it's hot.
Actually, I'll make sure Bob does it. You pay for us to fly over there. We'll fly over there and turn it on for you guys.
Real.
God, dude, no, dude. That
Land podcast.
Is hot. Oh God. I do want to talk about the fact that Tulane sent me a DM wanting to 1v1 with hot sauce. Every time you get scored on, you gotta take a hit of hot sauce.
Oh my goodness. That'd be a terrible experience.
I want to make it happen.
Have you guys ever had Dave's Insanity hot sauce?
I have not.
So I'm from Louisiana, so hot sauce is craziness. But my stepdad got this Dave's Insanity hot sauce one time, and he put a drop on my food. I was probably 10, 11, 12. A drop. I thought I was going to die. I am not a spicy food person. And then the worst part is I started rinsing out my mouth, and then I rubbed my eyes, and I guess some of it got on my fingers from the bottle or something, and then my eyes started going crazy. So I don't mess with hot sauce at all pretty much anymore, unless it's like a 2 on the spicy scale.
Yeah, I just eat Frank's, man. I just put it on some Frank's on the eggs.
180,000 Scoville is what Dave's Insanity's hot sauce is.
What's Frank's?
I would assume that's hot.
So it is pretty hot.
That's a big number.
I kind of want to walk up. I kind of want to walk upstairs. I've got a bottle on my dining room table that I was going to send to Tulane, and that's what we were going to use. It's it's called Can of Whoop Ass.
Nice.
It's a Carolina Reaper based hot sauce. It's roughly about 1.5 to 1.8 million Scoville.
Yeah, that's nothing. You got it. You're fine.
Dude, no, I can put like 5 drops in a whole thing of chili, like a whole stock pot, like I'm cooking for the fam. That is enough. Like that is enough. I just know that. Oh, I'm just hoping that Tulane's not a hot sauce connoisseur, and that like 2 goals in, he's gonna be sweating.
Can you even taste that? Or is it just spicy?
It's got great flavor. It is great, like dry heat flavor.
Once it burns the rest of your taste buds off.
There you
go. A lot of pain right after.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, this was fun, guys. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
No problem, broski. Thanks for showing up since I didn't actually square any of this away
yes, sir.
in the week.
Yeah, he DM'd me today and he's like, "Hey, are you still good for tonight?" I'm like, "I thought we were doing next week." But I can be on in 10 minutes if you want me to be.
Oh god, dude, I've been all over the place this week. But anywho, for everybody who's been tuning in tonight, I've been Master Tala. Joining me on the desk tonight has been Mr. Rob and Mr. Croc. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and have a good night.